The sound of the tires slicing through the rain-soaked asphalt was hypnotic, almost soothing. I'd been on the highway for hours, chasing the invisible horizon with nothing but my thoughts and the glow of my headlights cutting through the pitch-black night. I wasn't supposed to be here, not at this hour and not in this weather, but plans had shifted. My phone buzzed, but I ignored it. My hands were firmly gripping the wheel. This stretch of Highway 16 was infamous, if the locals' whispered warnings were to be believed. They called it the Haunted Mile. I never believed in ghost stories or urban legends. But as the radio sputtered into static and the rain began to fall harder, there was an itch at the back of my mind. Like I wasn't alone out here. The first sign something was wrong came as I rounded a bend. In the beam of my headlights, a figure appeared on the shoulder of the road. A woman, drenched from head to toe, her long, dark hair plastered to her face. She wasn't waving for help, wasn't flagging me down. She just stood there, staring as my car approached. Instinctively, I slowed down. Something about her stillness was unnatural. As I got closer, my stomach tightened. Her eyes, empty and black, void of any reflection, locked onto mine even through the rain-spattered windshield. The second I passed her, the temperature in my car dropped, and my breath fogged up the glass. A chill ran down my spine. I accelerated, heart hammering. I told myself I was imagining things, that fatigue was playing tricks on me. But a glance in the rearview mirror nearly made me swerve off the road. She was there, standing dead center in the lane, still staring. And then, she wasn't. I didn't stop driving, not even when the rain lightened to a drizzle. My chest tightened with a pressure I couldn't explain, like the air had thickened. The landscape, once familiar with its endless rows of pines and faded road signs, began to warp. Trees seemed to loom closer to the road. Shadows danced in the periphery of my vision. And the highway, it felt longer than it should have been. Miles later, my headlights illuminated something ahead. An old, beat-up sedan, stalled diagonally across the lane. Its hazard lights blinked weakly, casting the surrounding fog in intermittent flashes of orange. I pulled over cautiously, heart pounding. Inside the car was a man, slumped over the steering wheel. At first, I thought he was hurt or unconscious. But then his head snapped up, and he turned toward me. His face was pale, his eyes wide with terror. His lips moved, mouthing words I couldn't hear through the closed windows. I didn't want to roll mine down, but something compelled me. I cracked it an inch. "You shouldn't be here," he whispered. His voice was raw, hoarse, like he'd been screaming for hours. "What happened?" I asked. He glanced past me, down the highway, and shook his head violently. "Turn around. Leave, now, before it finds you." I leaned closer, trying to understand. "Before what finds me?" He didn't answer. Instead, he opened his door and staggered into the woods, vanishing into the blackness without a second glance. I sat there, frozen. The man's words echoed in my mind as the sound of my own breathing filled the car. I should have listened, should have turned back. But the thought of reversing into the same darkness where the woman had appeared, that felt worse. So I pressed forward. It wasn't long before the highway began to change again. The mile markers vanished, and the trees closed in like jagged teeth. The air grew heavier, almost suffocating. And then my engine sputtered. The dashboard lights flickered before going completely dark. I was stranded. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the sound of rain pattering against the car. And then, I heard it, a faint scraping sound, like nails dragging across metal. My chest tightened as I scanned my surroundings, peering through the fogged-up windows. Nothing. The sound came again, louder this time, circling the car. My pulse raced. I locked the doors and grabbed my phone, but it was useless, no signal. The scraping stopped, replaced by a heavy, deliberate knock on the driver's side window. I didn't turn, couldn't, but in the corner of my vision I saw her. The woman from the shoulder, her empty black eyes staring into mine. She smiled, revealing teeth too sharp, too white. What happened next is a blur. I remember slamming my foot on the accelerator, the engine roaring back to life as I tore down the highway. My rearview mirror showed nothing, no woman, no man, no stalled car. The highway spit me out onto an unfamiliar stretch of road, a gas station's neon sign flickering in the distance. I pulled in, shaking, my knuckles white on the steering wheel. The attendant gave me a strange look as I stumbled inside, muttering something about the haunted mile. "You're lucky you made it out," he said, his tone too casual for comfort. "Not everyone does." I didn't ask for details. I didn't need to. The scratches on my car and the chill in my bones told me enough. I don't take that highway anymore, and if you're ever driving down Highway 16, do yourself a favor. Don't stop. Don't look back. And whatever you do, don't slow down. For days after that night, the memories haunted me like a fever dream I couldn't shake. The woman's empty black eyes, the man's frantic warning, the scraping sounds circling my car. It all looped in my mind, each detail more vivid than the last. I tried to rationalize it, chalk it up to fatigue or an overactive imagination. But the scratches on the driver's side of my car were very real, deep grooves etched into the metal, as though something with claws had tried to peel the door open. I wanted to forget, but the more I tried, the more it gnawed at me. Questions bubbled up, questions I couldn't answer. What had I seen? What had the man meant by it? And why did I feel like I hadn't escaped? Not really. A week later, I found myself staring at a map, tracing the stretch of Highway 16 with trembling fingers. I knew I shouldn't go back, but curiosity is a dangerous thing. It whispers in your ear, convinces you to look when you should close your eyes. So, against every shred of common sense, I did the one thing I promised myself I wouldn't do. I returned. This time I prepared. Flashlights, a crowbar, a full tank of gas, and my phone fully charged with an offline map downloaded. I also brought along a dashcam, a cheap model I'd picked up at a convenience store. If nothing else, I thought I'd have proof of whatever I saw or didn't see. I set out at dusk, the fading sunlight painting the highway in hues of burnt orange and blood red. The road seemed normal enough at first, its worn asphalt stretching endlessly ahead. But as night fell, the familiar unease settled over me, a heaviness in the air that made it hard to breathe. The mile markers disappeared again, just like before. The trees loomed closer, their branches clawing at the edges of the road. My headlights flickered, but I pressed on, gripping the wheel so tightly my knuckles ached. And then, in the distance, I saw it. The same beat-up sedan, parked diagonally across the road. Its hazard lights blinked weakly, casting an eerie orange glow through the mist. I stopped several yards away, my pulse pounding in my ears. This time, I didn't get out. Instead, I rolled down the window a crack and called out, "Hello? Is anyone there?" No response. The sedan's driver's side door hung open, swinging slightly in the wind. A chill ran down my spine as I noticed the fresh scratches along its exterior, mirroring the ones on my car. Something had been here. Recently, I reached for my phone, intending to snap a picture. But as I unlocked the screen, the dashcam let out a sharp, high-pitched beep. I glanced at the feed, displayed on my phone via Bluetooth. At first, it showed nothing but the empty road ahead. Then, a shadow moved across the frame. It was subtle, almost imperceptible. A blur of darkness, like a ripple in the air. I squinted at the screen, trying to make sense of it, when the blur shifted, right in front of the sedan. It solidified, taking shape. A figure. It was tall, impossibly so, with limbs that seemed to stretch unnaturally long. Its face, or what passed for one, was a blank canvas, smooth and featureless. But its head turned toward me, and I swear it saw me. The thing began to move, its jerky, inhuman gait propelling it toward my car. Panic surged through me as I fumbled to roll up the window. The dashcam feed cut out, replaced by static. And then I heard it, the scraping. It started softly, almost tentative, like claws testing the surface of my car. Then it grew louder, more insistent, circling the vehicle just as it had before. My hands shook as I turned the key in the ignition. The engine sputtered once, twice, and then roared to life. I didn't wait. Slamming the car into reverse, I peeled backward, tires screeching against the asphalt. The scraping followed, relentless, even as I swerved around the sedan and gunned it down the highway. For a moment, I thought I'd escaped. The road ahead stretched empty, the mist thinning. But then my headlights caught something in the distance. The woman. She stood in the center of the lane, her drenched hair plastered to her face, her empty black eyes locking onto mine. And this time, she wasn't alone. Behind her, shadows emerged from the trees, dozens of them. Their limbs too long, their movements too strange. They began to run. The last thing I remember is pressing the gas pedal to the floor, the engine roaring as I raced toward them. I didn't stop. I didn't slow down. And as my car plowed through the figures, I felt an impact, followed by a deafening screech. When I opened my eyes, I was parked on the shoulder of a different highway, my car idling quietly. The scratches were gone. The dashcam was missing, and the clock on my dashboard read 3:33 a.m. I don't know how I got there. I don't know what happened to the woman, the shadows, or the sedan. But one thing is clear. Something is out there on Highway 16, and it's waiting. For weeks, I tried to forget. But forgetting doesn't come easy when the world has shifted under your feet, when you've glimpsed something that defies everything you thought you knew. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw them. Those shadowy figures, their jerky movements, the sound of their claws against my car. The woman's black eyes haunted me, a void that seemed to pull at the edges of my sanity. Then came the dreams. At first, they were scattered fragments. Headlights slicing through fog, the crackle of static, whispers I couldn't quite make out. But the dreams grew more vivid, more coherent, until they became impossible to ignore. In one, I was back on Highway 16, standing outside my car. The rain poured down, cold and relentless, soaking me to the bone. The woman stood in the distance, her figure barely visible through the mist. But as I stepped closer, the scene shifted. The highway dissolved, replaced by a cavernous space filled with pulsating shadows. And at its center was the tall figure, the one with no face. It raised a hand, and a voice echoed in my mind, hollow and inescapable. "You were not meant to leave." I woke up gasping for air, drenched in sweat. My heart raced, and for a moment, I wasn't sure where I was. The dream felt too real, too immediate. And worse, the voice. It lingered, like an echo that refused to fade. The dreams weren't the only thing. Strange things began happening in my waking life. Electronics around me flickered and died for no reason. My phone, my TV, even the streetlights outside my apartment. I'd hear faint whispers when I was alone. Whispers that stopped the moment I tried to focus on them. And then there were the scratches. They appeared on my windows, my furniture, even my bedroom door. Always 3 parallel lines, carved with precision. It was as if whatever had stalked me on the highway was reminding me that I hadn't truly escaped. By now, fear had twisted into something darker. Obsession. Couldn't let it go. I needed answers, even if it meant going back to the source. I began scouring the internet for stories about Highway 16, piecing together every rumor, every legend. What I found only deepened the mystery. There were reports of missing persons, accidents with no explanation, and vehicles found abandoned on the haunted mile. Some drivers claimed to have seen figures in the fog. Others spoke of hearing voices on the radio or feeling an unbearable cold. But the most chilling accounts were from those who had survived, like me. They all described the same thing. The woman with black eyes, the shadows, and the tall figure. And every story ended the same way, with the survivor claiming they weren't truly alone, that something had followed them. Desperation drove me to a local historian, a man named Daniel who'd written a book on urban legends. His office was cluttered, filled with old maps and stacks of yellowed papers. When I mentioned Highway 16, he froze. "You're not the first to ask about it," he said, his voice low. "That stretch of road has been cursed for decades, maybe longer." He told me about the early settlers who'd vanished in the area, their cabins found abandoned with no sign of struggle. About the 1936 road crew who reported seeing a woman in white wandering the forest before half the crew disappeared. And about the more recent incidents, The missing hikers, the unsolved hit-and-runs, the strange sightings. But it's not just a place, Daniel continued, his expression grave. It's a doorway, and sometimes things come through. What kind of things? I asked, my throat dry. He hesitated. I don't know, but those who survive, if you can call it that, they're marked. Whatever's out there doesn't let go easily. I felt the weight of his words settle over me, a suffocating truth I couldn't escape. I was marked, and whatever had followed me from the highway, it wasn't finished. That night, I decided to watch the dashcam footage. I hadn't dared look at it before, but now I needed to know. I plugged the memory card into my laptop, my fingers trembling as the video loaded. First, it was just the highway. My car speeding through the rain, the sedan's flashing hazards, the brief glimpse of the woman. But as the video progressed, the anomalies began. The shadows flickered in and out of the frame, moving faster than the eye could follow. The screen crackled with static, and faint whispers filled the audio. And then the tall figure appeared. It emerged from the fog, its form unnaturally elongated, its head tilting toward the camera as if it knew it was being watched. The whispers grew louder, almost a chant. The figure raised a hand, and the video froze, the frame distorting into a kaleidoscope of black and gray. A single word appeared on the screen, typed in a font I didn't recognize. Return. The video cut to black. I don't know why I'm writing this now. Maybe it's to warn someone, or maybe it's just to get it out of my head. The scratches are back, deeper this time, and the whispers have grown louder. I've started seeing things in the corner of my vision. Shadows that move when they shouldn't, eyes that watch from the darkness. I can feel it closing in. But the worst part is, I don't think I have a choice anymore. Whatever's out there, it wants me back. And this time, I don't think I'll be leaving. I'm sitting here now, staring at the glowing screen, typing this because I know it's the last thing I'll ever write. Feels like the walls are closing in, the air in my apartment too thick, too heavy. Every sound feels amplified. The hum of the refrigerator, the creak of the floorboards, the faint scratch coming from the hallway. I haven't dared open the door to look. I tried to run. I packed my car and drove as far as I could, hoping to escape whatever this is. But no matter where I went, the whispers followed. The shadows grew longer, reaching out for me in the dark. The scratches appeared on the windows of every motel room I stayed in. And last night, I saw her again. I was parked at a gas station in the middle of nowhere, too tired to keep driving. The place was empty, the kind of outpost that feels frozen in time, the neon open sign buzzing faintly in the rain. I had my seat reclined, eyes closed, when the temperature in the car plummeted. At first, I thought it was just the rain, a cold draft seeping through the cracks. But then the smell hit me, wet earth and decay, a stench so overpowering it made my stomach churn. My breath fogged up the windshield, and when I wiped it with my sleeve, she was there. The woman with black eyes stood in the rain, her head tilted unnaturally to one side, her long hair hanging limp and sodden. She was closer this time, just a few feet from the car. Her lips moved, forming words I couldn't hear, but I didn't need to. I knew what she was saying. It's time. I've spent all day trying to fight the inevitable, trying to convince myself I could still escape. But deep down, I know the truth. The dreams, the whispers, the scratches, they were warnings. Whatever marked me on Highway 16 has been calling me back, pulling me closer with every passing second. I went back through the dashcam footage, searching for something I'd missed. A clue, a detail, anything to help me understand. But instead, I found something new. Near the end of the video, where it had frozen before, the screen flickered back to life for just a moment. It showed me standing by my car on the side of the road, staring at something off camera. The tall figure was behind me, its long limbs outstretched, its featureless face looming over my shoulder. And in that brief second before the video cut out, I turned to look at it. I was smiling. The whispers are louder now, no longer faint but insistent, a chorus echoing through my apartment. I can see shadows moving in the corners of the room, circling closer with every heartbeat. The scratches on the walls are fresh, deep grooves that weren't there an hour ago. And then there's the word, scrawled across my mirror in something dark and wet. Return. I'm done fighting. I understand now that this isn't something you can run from. It's not a haunting, not a curse. It's a reclamation. The highway doesn't let you leave, not really. It just waits, patient and relentless, until you're ready to come back. The clock on my phone reads 3:33 a.m., the same time it read when I woke up on the shoulder of that other highway. The time when everything began. I'm going back. If anyone finds this, take my advice. Stay off Highway 16. Ignore the stories, the whispers, the pull. Because once you've seen it, once it's seen you, there's no escape. And if you ever see the woman with black eyes standing on the side of the road, staring at you through the rain, don't stop. Don't look back. And whatever you do, don't slow down.